The morning sun cast long shadows across the Mars colony when the message arrived. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was checking the water recycling systems when her communication device buzzed with an urgent signal. The display showed a priority alert. From Earth Defense Command? She had never seen one before. All senior staff to the command center immediately, the message read. Elena dropped her tools and ran. The command center buzzed with activity. Screens flashed with data streams and communication channels from across the solar system. Admiral Sarah Chun stood at the center of it all, her face grim as she studied a holographic display floating above the main table. "What's the situation?" Elena asked as she joined the other department heads gathering around the Admiral. Admiral Chun looked up. Her usually calm expression showed something Elena had never seen before: fear. "We received a transmission 30 minutes ago," Chun said. "It came from outside our solar system, from something calling itself the Galactic Council." Elena felt her stomach drop. First contact. After decades of searching for alien life, they had finally found humans. Or rather, they had found humans first. What did they say? Asked Dr. James Park, the head of the research division. Admiral Chun pressed a button on the hologram controls. The display changed to show a recording of the transmission. The image that appeared made several people step back. The alien was tall and thin, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. Its head was larger than a human's, with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on its face. When it spoke, the translation software had given it a cold, mechanical voice. "I am Ambassador Zexthal of the Hegemony, speaking for the Galactic Council," the alien said. "We address the species known as humans of the planet Earth," the recording continued. "Your rapid expansion beyond your birth world has been noted. Your development of advanced weapons and space travel technology poses a threat to galactic stability." Elena watched in growing horror as the alien delivered what could only be called an ultimatum. "The Galactic Council has reached a decision regarding your species. You will immediately halt all expansion beyond your solar system. You will surrender all advanced weapons technology to Council representatives. You will accept Council oversight of your civilization." The alien paused, and somehow its expression became even colder. "You have 72 standard hours to comply with these demands. Failure to do so will result in corrective action against your species. This is not a negotiation. This is a final warning." The transmission ended. The command center fell silent. Except for the hum of computers and the distant sound of air recyclers. "How many ships do they have?" Elena finally asked. "Long-range sensors detected a fleet massing at the edge of our solar system," Admiral Chun replied. "Current count is over 200 vessels. Some of them are massive. Bigger than anything we've ever built." Dr. Park ran his hands through his. "Gray hair? 200 ships? We have what, maybe 30 combat-capable vessels scattered across the system." 28, Chun corrected. "And most of those are patrol boats and system defense platforms. Nothing designed for fleet combat." Elena looked around the room at the faces of Earth's best and brightest. These were the people who had built the first permanent Mars colony, who had established mining operations in the asteroid belt, who had sent probes to the outer planets. Now they looked defeated before the fight had even started. "What do we know about them?" Elena asked. "This Galactic Council?" Admiral Chun brought up a new display. "Based on the transmission data and what our sensors can tell us, they represent multiple alien species. The fleet composition suggests at least 5 different ship designs, probably from different worlds. So this isn't just one species threatening." "U.S., Dr. Park said. "It's an alliance of multiple civilizations. That's what it looks like," Chun agreed. "And they seem to think we're primitive enough to just roll over and surrender." Elena studied the sensor data showing the alien fleet. The ships were arranged in perfect formation at the very edge of the solar system, just beyond Pluto's orbit. They weren't hiding. They weren't trying to be sneaky. They were making a statement. They want us to see them, she realized. "They're showing us how outgunned we are, probably," Chun said. "Classic intimidation tactic." show overwhelming force and hope the enemy surrenders without a fight. Are we going to surrender? Asked Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez, the base's security chief. Admiral Chun was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was steady and determined. No, we're not. Admiral, Dr. Park said carefully, I understand the impulse to fight, but we need to be realistic. They have 200 ships. We have less than 30. The math isn't in our favor. The math never is, Chun replied. When the American colonies fought the British Empire, the math wasn't in their favor either. When tiny Finland fought the Soviet Union, the math said they should lose in weeks. This is different, Dr. Park interrupted. Those were human conflicts. These are aliens with technology we don't understand. Admiral Chun smiled, and there was something dangerous in that smile. You're right. This is different, but maybe not in the way you think. She turned to Elena. Dr. Rodriguez, I need you to get me everything we know about their ships. Engine signatures, hull composition, anything our sensors can tell us. What are you thinking? Elena asked. I'm thinking that maybe they don't know us as well as they think they do, Chun said. They called us primitive. They gave us an ultimatum like we're children who need to be disciplined. She pulled up another display, this one showing human. Military installations across the solar system. But here's what they might not know. Humans don't just surrender when threatened. We get angry, and when humans get angry, we get creative. Elena began to understand. You want to fight them. I want to show them that threatening humanity was a mistake, Chun said. They think they know what kind of species we are. They think we're just another primitive civilization that will fold the moment we see their superior technology. But we're not, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez said, his voice growing excited. No, we're not, Admiral Chun agreed. We're the species that split the atom and then used it to end a world war. We're the species that went from first flight to landing on the moon in 66 years. We're the species that looked at the impossible, distance between stars, and said, we'll find a way. Elena felt a chill run down her spine, but it wasn't fear. It was anticipation. What do you need from us? She asked. Admiral Chun turned to address the entire room. I need every department head to compile a complete inventory of our capabilities. Not just military hardware, everything, every research project, every experimental technology, every half-finished prototype sitting in a lab somewhere. Even the classified projects? Dr. Park asked. Especially the classified projects, Chun said. I have a feeling we're going to need every advantage we can get. She paused and looked around the room again. I'm not going to lie to you. The odds are against us. They have more ships, older technology, probably centuries or millennia of experience with space warfare. But they made one critical mistake. What's that? Elena asked. Admiral Chun's smile became even more dangerous. They gave us 72 hours to prepare. They think that's enough time for us to realize how hopeless our situation is and surrender. What they don't realize is that 72 hours is enough time for humans to do something crazy. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. So we're really going to fight them, Dr. Park said. It wasn't a question. We're going to do more than fight them, Admiral Chun said. We're going to show them why threatening humanity is the worst mistake anyone can make in this galaxy. Elena looked around the room at her colleagues. These were scientists, engineers, researchers. Most of them had never seen combat. But she could see something changing in their faces. The fear was still there, but it was being replaced by something else. Determination. Admiral, Elena said, what do you need me to do? Get me everything our sensors have recorded about their fleet, Chun replied. Ship sizes, energy signatures, formation patterns. Everything. Done. Dr. Park, I need a complete list of every experimental project in your division. Even the ones that didn't work. Especially the ones that didn't work, Dr. Park said with growing understanding. Admiral Chun nodded. Sometimes the things that don't work for their intended purpose work perfectly for something else entirely. She turned to address the entire room one final time. People, we have 72 hours to prepare for the most important battle in human history. Not just for Earth, not just for our colonies, but for the right of humanity to exist as a free species. Elena felt her heart pounding. This was really happening. After all the science fiction stories, all the speculation about what would happen. When humanity finally met alien life, here they were. And it wasn't going the way anyone had imagined. Are there any questions? Admiral Chun asked. Elena raised her hand. Just one. Do you really think we can win? Admiral Chun looked at her for a long moment before answering. Dr. Rodriguez, I think the Galactic Council is about to learn something that every human enemy has learned throughout our history. We might not be the strongest species in the galaxy. We might not be the smartest. We might not have the best technology. She paused, and her voice became deadly serious. But we are absolutely, without question, the most stubborn species that has ever existed. And sometimes, stubborn is enough. The meeting ended, and everyone dispersed to their tasks. Elena hurried back to her lab, her mind already racing with possibilities. The aliens thought they were dealing with a primitive species. They thought humans would surrender when faced with overwhelming odds. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 48 hours remained when Dr. Marcus Webb received the call that would change everything. He was deep underground in the Nevada facility, 3 miles beneath the desert surface, when his secure phone buzzed with an emergency priority signal. Dr. Webb, this is Admiral Chun. I need you in the briefing room immediately. Marcus looked up from the equations covering his whiteboard. For 6 years, he had been working on Project Prometheus in complete secrecy. Only 12 people in the world knew what he was really doing down here. Now it seemed that number was about to grow. On my way, Admiral. The elevator ride to the briefing level took 4 minutes. Marcus used the time to think about what Admiral Chun might want. The project was still theoretical. The math worked, but they had never tested it on anything larger than a grain of rice. Still, if the rumors about alien contact were true, maybe theory would have to be enough. The briefing room was packed when Marcus arrived. He recognized faces from across the government and military. Secretary of Defense Williams sat at the head of the table, with Admiral Chun beside her. Around them were representatives from every major defense contractor, research facility, and military branch. Dr. Webb, Admiral Chun said as he entered, thank you for coming. Please, take a seat. Marcus sat down and waited. Secretary Williams stood and addressed the room. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level. 2 days ago, we received a transmission from an alien alliance calling itself the Galactic Council. They have given us an ultimatum: surrender or be destroyed. A murmur went around the room. Even though most of them had suspected something like this, hearing it confirmed was still shocking. We have 24 hours left to comply with their demands, Williams continued. We will not be complying, the murmur grew louder. Williams raised her hand for silence. Instead, we are going to show them why threatening Earth was a mistake. Admiral Chun will explain. Admiral Chun stood and activated the room's holographic display. The image showed the alien fleet at the edge of the solar system. 207 ships, Chun said. Our best estimates put their total firepower at roughly 50 times what our entire fleet can deliver. In a conventional fight, we would lose badly. She paused and looked around the room. So we're not going to fight conventionally. The display changed to show a schematic of something Marcus didn't recognize at first. Then he realized what he was looking at and felt his blood run cold. Dr. Webb, Admiral Chun said, would you please explain Project Prometheus to the group? Marcus stood slowly, his mouth felt dry. Project Prometheus is a theoretical weapon system based on relativistic physics. The basic concept is simple. Take a small object and accelerate it to a significant fraction of light speed. He gestured to the hologram. At 30% of light speed, even a small projectile carries enormous kinetic energy. The math is straightforward. Kinetic energy equals 1/2 mass times velocity squared. When the velocity approaches light speed, the energy becomes enormous. Finished Dr. Sarah Kim from the Lawrence Livermore Lab. You're talking about turning physics into a weapon. That's exactly what I'm talking about, Marcus said. A 1 kilogram projectile moving at 30% light speed carries roughly 4.5 times 10 to the 15th joules of energy. That's equivalent to a 1 megaton nuclear weapon, but with no radiation and no fallout. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. How do you accelerate something to that speed? Asked General Morrison from Space Command. Marcus turned to the hologram and highlighted different sections of the schematic. Multiple stages. First, we use a railgun to provide initial acceleration. Then fusion ramjets take over for the middle phase. Finally, we use gravitational assists from the outer planets to reach final velocity. How long does this take? Admiral Chun asked. From launch to target impact, approximately 18 hours if we're aiming at the edge of the solar system. Secretary Williams leaned forward. Dr. Webb, is this system operational? Marcus hesitated. The theory is sound. We've tested individual components, but we've never built a full-scale system. How long would it take to build one? Under normal circumstances, 2 years, minimum. And under emergency circumstances? Marcus looked around the room at the assembled experts. Every major defense contractor was represented. Every national laboratory, every military research facility. If we had unlimited resources and complete cooperation from everyone in this room, maybe 20 hours, Admiral Chun smiled. Dr. Webb, you have unlimited resources and complete cooperation. General Morrison, I need every construction team from every military base in North America. Dr. Kim, I need every fabrication facility at Lawrence Livermore working on this project. Mr. Patterson, she turned to the Boeing representative. I need your best engineers and every piece of advanced manufacturing equipment you have. The room erupted in activity as people began making phone calls and sending messages. Marcus felt overwhelmed by the sudden rush of support. Admiral, he said, even if we can build it in time, we've never tested the system. We don't know if it will work. Dr. Webb, Admiral Chun replied, do you believe the physics is correct? Yes. Do you believe the engineering is sound? In theory, yes. Then we build it and hope for the best. Because right now, hope is all we have. Over the next 18 hours, Marcus watched the most impressive display of human coordination he had ever seen. Construction teams worked around the clock building the railgun assembly. The railgun itself was massive, over 2 kilometers long, built into a canyon in the Nevada desert. At the Lawrence Livermore Lab, teams worked on the fusion ramjet components. The ramjets would have to operate in the vacuum of space, collecting interstellar hydrogen to fuel their operation. It was cutting-edge technology that pushed the limits of human engineering. Meanwhile, trajectory specialists calculated the exact path the projectile would need to follow. They had to account for the gravitational pull of every planet, every asteroid, every significant mass in the solar system. The calculations were staggeringly complex. Dr. Webb, Admiral Chun said as she joined him at the construction site. How are we looking? Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead. The railgun is almost complete. The ramjets are installed and tested. The trajectory is calculated, but I have to be honest with you, Admiral. This is still experimental technology. There are 1,000 things that could go wrong. What's our chance of success? Marcus thought about it, maybe 60%. Better odds than fighting their fleet directly, Chun said. What about the projectile itself? Tungsten core, depleted uranium jacket, total mass of 5 kilograms. At 30% light speed, it will hit with the energy of a 5 megaton. Boom. Admiral Chun was quiet for a moment. Will that be enough to get their attention? Admiral, if this works, it will get everyone's attention. The energy release will be visible from Earth with the naked eye. Good, I want them to see exactly what we're capable of. With 6 hours left until the alien deadline, the system was ready. Marcus stood in the control bunker, looking at readouts from hundreds of sensors and computers. Everything showed green. "Dr. Webb," Admiral Chun said over the intercom from Earth Defense Command, "are you ready?" Marcus looked at his team. 24 of the best scientists and engineers on Earth, all working together on humanity's most desperate gamble. "We're ready, Admiral. Target? The flagship," Marcus said. "Sensors indicate it's the largest ship in their fleet. If we're going to send a message, we might as well make it a clear one." "Understood, Dr. Webb. You are authorized to fire when ready." Marcus turned to his launch team. Final system check. "Railgun charged and ready. Ramjets armed and tested. Trajectory locked in. All sensors green." Marcus took a deep breath. In all of human history, no one had ever built a weapon like this. They were about to fire a projectile that would travel at 90,000 kilometers per second. If it worked, it would arrive at the alien fleet in just over 18 hours. If it didn't work, Earth would face the alien fleet with conventional weapons. And that would be the end of human civilization. "Fire," Marcus said. The railgun fired, with a sound like thunder. The projectile shot out of the canyon at 30 kilometers per second, already faster than any human-made object in history. But this was just the beginning. As the projectile cleared Earth's atmosphere, the first ramjet ignited, then the second, then the third. Each stage added velocity, pushing the small tungsten dart faster and faster. Marcus watched the telemetry. As the projectile raced toward the outer solar system, everything was working perfectly. The ramjets were performing exactly as designed. The trajectory was precise. "Velocity?" Admiral Chun asked over the comm. "Increasing steadily," Marcus reported. "Current speed is 8,000 kilometers per second and climbing. Time to target? 17 hours, 36 minutes. Admiral Chun was quiet for a moment. "Dr. Webb, assuming this works, what should we expect to see?" Marcus pulled up his calculations. The impact will release approximately 2.2 times 10 to the 16th joules of energy. That's equivalent to 5 megatons of TNT released instantaneously. The target ship will be completely vaporized. Any nearby ships will be severely damaged by the radiation pulse. And we'll be able to see it from Earth? Admiral, the energy release will briefly outshine the sun. Everyone on the night side of Earth will see it. Perfect, Admiral Chun said. I want them to know that when humans are threatened, we don't just fight back. We fight back with the fundamental forces of the universe. Marcus looked at his display, showing the projectile's progress. It was now traveling at over 20,000 kilometers per second and still accelerating. In 16 hours, it would reach the alien fleet. The aliens thought they were dealing with a primitive species. They thought humans would surrender when faced with superior technology. They were about to learn that humans had a different approach to superior technology. When faced with something better than what they had, humans didn't surrender. They built something better. Dr. Webb, Admiral Chun said, I want you to know that regardless of what happens in the next 18 hours, you and your team have given humanity a fighting chance. That's more than we had yesterday. Marcus nodded, though he knew she couldn't see him. Admiral, there's something else you should know. If this works, if we actually manage to hit their flagship with a relativistic projectile, we won't just be sending them a message. What do you mean? We'll be announcing to the entire galaxy that Earth has mastered weaponized physics. Every civilization out there will know that humanity can build weapons that turn mass and velocity into planet-killing energy. And that's a bad thing? Marcus smiled grimly. No, Admiral. I think that's exactly the kind of reputation we want to have. 16 hours after launch, the tungsten projectile reached its maximum velocity. Dr. Marcus Webb watched the telemetry from his control bunker as the small dart traveled at 97,000 kilometers per second through the dark between worlds. At that speed, it was moving at almost one-third the speed of light itself. Current position? Admiral Chun asked over the communication link. Passing Jupiter's orbit, Marcus reported. All systems nominal. projected impact in 2 hours, 14 minutes. On the bridge of the massive alien flagship Eternal Dominion, Fleet Commander Thexver reviewed the latest reports from his scouts. The humans had gone completely silent after receiving the ultimatum. No communications, no diplomatic overtures, no signs of preparation for either surrender or battle. Perhaps they are paralyzed by fear, suggested Sub-Commander Kreltoth, his second-in-command. Thexver was not convinced. His species, the hegemony, had been part of the Galactic Council for over 3,000 years. In that time, they had delivered ultimatums to dozens of primitive species. Most surrendered immediately when they saw the size of a council fleet. The few that chose to fight were quickly overwhelmed, but something about the humans felt different. Their expansion into space had been remarkably rapid. Their technology, while crude, showed an unusual creativity, and the complete silence was unlike any species they had encountered before. "Commander," called the sensor operator from his station, "I'm detecting a small object approaching our position." Thexver moved to the sensor display. "Show me." The screen displayed the human solar system with their fleet positioned at the outer edge. A tiny dot was moving from the inner system toward their position. "Velocity?" Thexver asked. "Sir, the sensors must be malfunctioning. They're showing impossible readings." "What kind of readings?" "Sir, the object appears to be traveling at approximately 30% of light speed." Thexver stared at the display. "That's impossible. No known propulsion system can achieve such velocities. Should we consider it a threat, sir?" Sub-Commander Kreltos asked. Thexver studied the sensor data. The object was incredibly small, no larger than a grain of sand according to their instruments. Even traveling at such an impossible speed, what damage could something so tiny possibly do? "Continue monitoring," he decided, "but maintain our position. Whatever the humans are attempting, it's clearly a desperate gesture." In the Earth Defense Command Center, Admiral Chun watched the countdown timer, 1 hour and 43 minutes until impact. Around her, the command staff monitored communications from across the solar system. Every human ship, station, and colony was watching and waiting. "Admiral," Dr. Elena Rodriguez called from her station, "we're getting reports from our deep space sensors. The alien fleet hasn't moved. They're maintaining position exactly where they were when they delivered the ultimatum." Admiral Chun nodded. "They're confident. They probably think our projectile is some kind of primitive missile. Should we warn them?" asked Colonel Martinez from the communications station. "Warn them about what?" Chun replied. "We're not targeting civilian ships. We're targeting their flagship. In military terms, that's a legitimate target." She paused and looked around the command center. "Besides, this isn't about destroying their ship. This is about sending a message. And messages are only effective if the recipient understands them clearly." Dr. Webb's voice came over the intercom. "Admiral, projectile is now 1 hour from impact. All telemetry normal. The object is holding course and velocity. Any signs that they've detected it?" "Unknown? At this distance and speed, even there, advanced sensors might have trouble tracking something so small." Admiral Chun understood. The projectile was traveling so fast that by the time their sensors detected it, they would have only seconds to react. And there was nothing they could do anyway. No ship could move fast enough to avoid an object traveling at 1/3 light speed. 40-7 minutes from impact. Fleet Commander Thexver received an urgent report from his chief science officer. "Commander, I've been analyzing the approaching object, sir. I believe we may have seriously underestimated the humans." "Explain." "Sir, if my calculations are correct, that object is not just traveling at 30% of light speed. It's a kinetic projectile. At that velocity, even a small mass would carry devastating energy." Thexver felt a chill run through his body. "How much energy?" "Sir, if the object masses even 1 kilogram, the impact energy would be equivalent to several megatons of explosive force." The bridge fell silent. Thexver stared at the display showing the tiny dot racing toward them. "Time to impact? 46 minutes, 17 seconds. Can we move the fleet out of its path?" Sir, at our maximum acceleration, we would need approximately 3 hours to clear the projected impact zone. Vexver realized with growing horror that the humans had outmaneuvered them completely. The Council fleet was positioned exactly where the humans wanted them. And now a weapon was racing toward them that they could not avoid and could not stop. "Send an emergency transmission to all ships," he ordered. "Prepare for kinetic impact. All vessels initiate maximum defensive procedures." But even as he gave the orders, Vexver knew they would be useless. The Eternal Dominion was a massive ship, over 5 kilometers long and protected by energy shields that could stop nuclear weapons. But kinetic energy was different. Kinetic energy was pure physics, and physics did not care about shields or armor. 20-3 minutes from impact, every human facility in the solar system received the same message from Admiral Chun. "All stations, this is Earth Defense Command. In 23 minutes, you will witness the first use of a relativistic kinetic weapon in human history. The weapon is targeted at the alien flagship. Impact energy will be equivalent to 5 megatons of TNT." She paused, letting that information sink in. "What you are about to see represents more than just a weapons test. It represents humanity's announcement to the galaxy that we are not a primitive species to be bullied. We are a species that has learned to weaponize the fundamental forces of the universe." Dr. Webb watched his instruments as the projectile closed the final distance. The tungsten dart had performed perfectly throughout its 18-hour journey. The ramjets had fired exactly as planned. The gravitational assist had provided the precise velocity increases needed. Everything had worked. 5 minutes to impact, he announced, on every human ship and station. People stopped what they were doing and turned toward the outer system. Telescopes swung toward the alien fleet. Camera drones positioned themselves for the best view. Humanity was about to witness something that had never happened before in galactic history. Fleet. Commander Vexver stood on his bridge and watched death approach at 97,000 kilometers per second. His ship's computers had calculated the impact point. The projectile would strike the Eternal Dominion almost exactly in the center, where the ship's main power core was located. "Sir," his science officer reported, "final mass estimate on the incoming projectile is 5.2 kilograms. Impact energy, sir, 5.8 megatons equivalent." Vexver closed his eyes. The Eternal Dominion was the most powerful ship in the hegemony fleet. It had served for over 800 years. It had conquered dozens of worlds. And it was about to be destroyed by a piece of metal the size of a small rock, fired by a species the Council had dismissed as primitive. 30 seconds to impact, the sensor operator announced. Vexver opened his communication channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, this is Fleet Commander Vexver. The humans have taught us a lesson today about the danger of underestimating any species. Whatever happens in the next 30 seconds, remember that knowledge. Take it back to the Council. Make sure they understand what we learned here." He paused, watching the final seconds count down. 10 seconds to impact. The tungsten projectile, traveling at 32% of light speed, struck the Eternal Dominion exactly amidships. The impact released 5.8 megatons of energy in less than a nanosecond. The massive ship simply ceased to exist. The energy release was so intense that it briefly created a small star in the darkness of space. The flash was visible across the entire solar system, bright enough to cast shadows on Mars and clearly visible from Earth even in daylight. The 3 escort ships closest to the flagship were caught in the expanding wave of superheated plasma and radiation. Their shields failed instantly, their hulls vaporized. In less than 2 seconds, 4 of the Council's most powerful ships had been reduced to expanding clouds of ionized gas. On Earth, Admiral Chun watched the explosion through the command center's main display. The energy release was exactly what Dr. Webb had predicted. The alien flagship and its escorts were gone, replaced by a rapidly expanding sphere of light and energy. "My God," whispered Colonel Martinez, "we actually did it." Admiral Chun activated the communication system and opened a channel to the remaining alien fleet. This is Admiral Sarah Chun of Earth Defense Command, addressing the Galactic Council. Fleet, what you have just witnessed was a demonstration of human defensive capability. She paused, watching the debris cloud continue to expand. The projectile that destroyed your flagship was accelerated using human technology to 32% of light speed. The impact energy was equivalent to a 5-megaton nuclear weapon, but with no radioactive fallout and no electromagnetic pulse. Another pause. This was not our most powerful weapon. This was a warning shot. Admiral Chung looked around the command center at her staff. Every face showed the same expression of amazement and pride. You demanded that humanity surrender our weapons and accept Council oversight. Instead, we offer you a counter-proposal. Withdraw your fleet from our solar system immediately. Return to the Council and inform them that Earth is under the protection of weapons that can destroy ships at the speed of light. She leaned forward toward the communication pickup. If any Council ship remains in our system in 1 hour, we will interpret that as an act of war. And if you think one projectile traveling at 1/3 light speed was impressive, wait until you see what happens when we fire a full salvo. Admiral Chun closed the communication channel and turned to Dr. Webb's voice on the intercom. Dr. Webb, how long would it take to prepare a second projectile? Admiral, we can have another one ready to fire in 6 hours. And now that we know the system works, we can build more railguns. Within a week, we could have a dozen of them operational. Admiral Chun smiled. The aliens had wanted to know what kind of species humanity was. Now they knew. Dr. Webb, begin construction on 5. More railguns immediately. And start working on larger projectiles. If we're going to have a reputation in this galaxy, let's make sure it's the right one. On the surviving ships of the Council fleet, emergency meetings were already underway. The humans had just demonstrated technology that made their entire fleet obsolete. Worse, they had done it with what appeared to be a hastily constructed weapon system. If the humans could build weapons like this quickly, if they could accelerate projectiles to relativistic speeds, if they could deliver planet-killing energy at the speed of light, then the balance of power in the galaxy had just shifted dramatically. And humanity had just announced to the universe that they were no longer a primitive species to be conquered. They were a species that had learned to weaponize physics itself. The emergency council session began exactly 1 hour after the Eternal Dominion was destroyed. Representatives from 17 different species appeared on the holographic conference platform, their faces showing a mixture of shock, fear, and disbelief. High Counselor Vexthara of the Ancient Ones called the session to order. Her species had founded the Galactic Council 4,000 years ago, and in all that time they had never faced a situation like this. We have all witnessed the destruction of the Hegemony flagship, she began, her voice carefully controlled. We are here to discuss the implications of what the humans have demonstrated. Sub-Commander Kreltoth, now the senior surviving officer of the Hegemony fleet, appeared in the center of the platform. His usual arrogance was gone, replaced by something none of them had seen from a Hegemony officer before. Fear. Honored counselors, Kreltoth began, I must report that the human weapon exceeded our worst projections. The Eternal Dominion was not damaged, it was not destroyed, it simply ceased to exist. Explain, demanded Counselor Zephyr of the Crystal Empire. The humans accelerated a 5-kilogram projectile to 32% of light speed. The kinetic energy release was equivalent to nearly 6 megatons of explosive force. Our shields, our armor, our defensive systems, none of it mattered. Physics cannot be defended against. The platform fell silent as the implications sank in. These were species that had mastered faster-than-light travel, energy weapons, and force fields. But none of them had ever thought to use raw kinetic energy as a weapon. How is such acceleration possible? Asked Counselor Morden of the Tech Syndicate. His species prided themselves on their technological advancement. We don't know, Kreltoth admitted. Our sensors detected multiple acceleration phases. They appeared to use primitive chemical rockets for initial velocity, then some form of ramjet propulsion, followed by gravitational assists from their planetary bodies. Primitive? Counselor Zephyr's crystalline form flickered with agitation. You call technology that can accelerate matter to relativistic speeds primitive? The individual components are primitive, Kreltooth explained. But the way they combine them, the engineering required to make it work, we've never seen anything like it. High Counselor Vexthara studied the data streams floating around the platform. What about their threat to fire multiple projectiles? Based on the construction time for their first weapon, they could potentially build dozens of these systems within a standard month. And Counselor, they mentioned larger projectiles. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Counselor Urix of the Trade Federation spoke. We need to understand something. How did a species we classified as primitive develop weapons that make our entire fleet obsolete? Dr. Sarah Kim was asking herself the same question in her laboratory at Lawrence Livermore. She had been part of the team that built the fusion ramjets for the projectile, and now she was trying to understand how they had succeeded so completely. It doesn't make sense, she told Dr. Webb over the secure communication link. We threw together experimental technology in less than 24 hours. It should have failed. But it didn't, Dr. Webb replied from his control bunker. And I think I know why. Explain. We approach the problem differently than anyone else would. The aliens think in terms of energy weapons and force fields. They build big ships with powerful engines and sophisticated defense systems, Dr. Kim nodded. They think like a technological civilization. Exactly. But we think like engineers trying to solve a problem with whatever tools we have available. We didn't try to build the most advanced weapon possible. We built the most effective weapon possible. On the bridge of the surviving hegemony ship Iron Will, Acting Fleet Commander Kreltooth received an urgent communication from the Council. Commander. High Counselor Vexthara's image appeared on his screen. What is the status of your fleet? Counselor, we have lost 4 ships including the flagship. The remaining vessels are undamaged, but... Counselor, I must be honest, my crews are shaken. They've never seen anything like what the humans just demonstrated. Are you able to continue the mission? Kreltooth was quiet for a long moment. Counselor, the humans gave us 1 hour to withdraw from their system. That deadline passes in 17 minutes. And? Counselor, I respectfully request permission to withdraw the fleet. The communication channel crackled with static as the High Counselor processed this request. In 4,000 years of Council history, no fleet commander had ever requested withdrawal from a primitive world. Commander, you have over 200 ships. The humans destroyed 4. Yes, Counselor. But they destroyed them with weapons that travel at light speed. We cannot fight projectiles that arrive before we can detect them. We cannot defend against weapons that use physics itself as ammunition. Admiral Chun received word of the alien. Fleet movement 8 minutes after her deadline had passed. Admiral, Dr. Rodriguez reported from her sensor station. The alien fleet is moving. They're withdrawing from the outer system. All of them? Yes, ma'am. All 203 remaining ships. They're heading out of the solar system at maximum speed. Admiral Chun felt a wave of relief wash over her. The gamble had worked. Humanity's first contact with alien life had been a threat, but they had turned it into a victory. Dr. Webb, she said over the intercom, congratulations. Your weapon just saved human civilization. Our weapon, Dr. Webb corrected. This was a team effort, Admiral. And I have a feeling it's just the beginning. Admiral Chun understood what he meant. Word of what had happened here would spread. Other alien species would hear that a small, supposedly primitive world had forced a council fleet to withdraw using weapons that seemed impossible, but the real impact was being felt in the council chambers themselves. Emergency sessions were being called on 17 different worlds as the member species tried to understand what had just happened on the crystal world of Zephyros. Counselor Zephyr stood before the Empire's military council and delivered a report that shook the foundation of their civilization. The humans have demonstrated weapons technology that renders our current military doctrine obsolete, she announced. They can deliver planet-killing energy at light speed with weapons that can be built in less than one standard day. General Thaxmer, the Empire's military commander, studied the data. How did they develop such technology so quickly? That's what concerns me most, Counselor Zephyr replied. According to our intelligence, this weapon was built in response to our ultimatum. They developed a relativistic kinetic weapon in less than 24 hours. Impossible. The evidence is floating in the debris field where the Eternal Dominion used to be. General Thaxmer was quiet for a long moment. What are you saying, Counselor? I'm saying that the humans may be the most dangerous species we've ever encountered. Not because they're violent, but because they're adaptable. When faced with a threat, they don't surrender. They innovate. On Earth, the celebration was subdued. Admiral Chun stood in the observation deck of the Earth Defense Command Center, looking out at the stars and thinking about what came next. Colonel Martinez joined her at the window. Admiral, we're receiving communication requests from dozens of sources. News agencies, government officials, even what appear to be other alien species. Other aliens? Yes, ma'am. It seems word of what happened here is spreading fast. Some of them are asking for diplomatic contact. Others are offering trade agreements. A few are asking for protection. Admiral Chun turned from the window. Protection? It appears that not everyone in the galaxy is happy with the Galactic Council's methods. Some species have been looking for someone capable of standing up to them, and now they think we're that someone. Yes, ma'am. Admiral Chun walked back toward the command center, her mind racing with possibilities. Humanity had won its first interstellar conflict, but that victory came with consequences. Earth was no longer an unknown world on the edge of the galaxy. They were now a power that other species would either fear or seek as an ally. In the council chambers, High Counselor Vexthara called for order as the emergency session continued. The debate had been going on for hours, and no consensus was emerging. The question before us is simple, she announced. How do we respond to the human demonstration? We respond with overwhelming force, declared Counselor Morden. We gather the full Council fleet and glass their planet before they can build more weapons. That would require every ship from every member species, Counselor Urix pointed out. And for what? To destroy one small world? The economic cost alone would be staggering. The cost of not acting could be higher, Morden argued. If the humans share their weapons technology with other species, if they become a rallying point for rebellion against the Council, then we'll have a war that could tear the galaxy apart, finished Counselor Zephyr. Is that really what we want? High Counselor Vexthara studied the faces of her fellow representatives. Fear was winning over wisdom. The humans had shattered the Council's sense of invincibility, and now panic was driving their decisions. There is another option, she said quietly. What option? Morden demanded. We could negotiate. The chamber erupted in angry voices. The idea of the mighty Galactic Council negotiating with a primitive species was almost unthinkable. But High Counselor Vexthara had seen the sensor data. She had studied the human weapon systems. And she understood something that the others did not. The humans hadn't just built a powerful weapon. They had built it impossibly fast using primitive technology and creative engineering. That suggested a level of adaptability and innovation that made them far more dangerous than their current weapons indicated. If the humans could build relativistic kinetic weapons in 24 hours, what could they build in a month? A year? A decade? High Counselor Vexthara made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. I am calling for a formal vote, she announced. All in favor of opening diplomatic negotiations with the human species? The vote was close. 9 species voted in favor, 8 against. But it was enough. For the first time in 4,000 years, the Galactic Council would negotiate with a species they had threatened to destroy. Admiral Chun was reviewing construction plans for additional railguns when the communication came in. The message was from the same alien that had delivered the original ultimatum, but his tone was completely different. I am Ambassador Zexthal of the Hegemony, speaking for the Galactic Council, the alien said. The Council requests the honor of opening diplomatic relations with the human species. Admiral Chun smiled, requested, not demanded. Not ordered, requested. The balance of power in the galaxy had indeed shifted, and humanity was no longer the species asking for permission to exist among the stars. They were the species that others asked permission to approach. 3 months after the destruction of the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Sarah Chun stood in what used to be called the United Nations Assembly Hall. Today, it had been renamed the Terran Diplomatic Center, and representatives from 43 different alien species filled the seats that once held Earth's national delegates. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Ambassador Zexthal of the Hegemony sat in the front row, no longer the arrogant representative who had delivered ultimatums. Now he was one of many alien diplomats seeking Earth's protection, trade agreements, or military alliance. Admiral Chun, he said as she approached the podium, the Galactic Council has voted to formally recognize Earth as a sovereign military power with full territorial rights to the Sol system. Admiral Chun nodded politely. We appreciate the Council's recognition, Ambassador. But as I've explained before, Earth doesn't seek recognition from the Council. We are what we are, regardless of what others choose to acknowledge. The subtle insult wasn't lost on anyone in the room. 6 months ago, the Council had been the ultimate authority in the galaxy. Now they were seeking legitimacy from a species they had once threatened to destroy. Dr. Marcus Webb entered the hall and took his seat among the human delegation. In the months since Project Prometheus, he had become one of the most famous humans in the galaxy. His name was spoken with equal parts respect and fear on dozens of worlds. Dr. Webb, Admiral Chun said, would you please update our guests on the current status of Earth's defensive systems? Dr. Webb stood and activated the holographic display at the center of the room. The image showed the solar system with glowing points of light scattered throughout. Currently operational are 12 relativistic railgun installations, he announced, each capable of firing projectiles at up to 40% of light speed. We also have 6 mobile platforms that can be positioned anywhere in the system within 72 hours, a murmur went through the assembled aliens. 40% of light speed was faster than anything the Council had seen before. Additionally, Dr. Webb continued, we have completed testing on larger projectile masses. Our newest installations can accelerate 20-kilogram tungsten rods to 35% of light speed. The alien delegates did the math in their heads. A 20-kilogram projectile at that velocity would carry the destructive power of a 100-megaton bomb. A single shot could destroy the largest dreadnought ever built. How many of these larger systems are operational? Asked Representative Clicks of the Trader Alliance. That information is classified, Dr. Webb replied with a smile. But I can tell you that any hostile fleet entering our system would face a very unpleasant welcome. Representative Yara of the Freehold Confederation raised her hand. Dr. Webb, there are rumors that Earth is developing even more advanced weapons. Can you comment? Dr. Webb glanced at Admiral Chun, who nodded. Project Titan is proceeding on schedule, he said. I can't discuss details, but I will say that our next generation systems will make our current weapons look primitive by comparison. The truth was that Project Titan was humanity's first attempt at building a weapon that could accelerate projectiles to 90% of light speed. At that velocity, a single shot would carry enough energy to crack a planet's crust. But Dr. Webb wasn't ready to share that information yet. In the weeks following the Eternal Dominion's destruction, something unexpected had happened across the galaxy. Species that had been suppressed by the Council for centuries began to speak up. Worlds that had been forced to pay tribute started refusing. Colonies that had been denied independence declared their freedom. The Council's response had been swift and brutal. They sent fleets to crush the rebellions, to restore order through force. But then something remarkable happened. Earth intervened. The first incident had been almost accidental. A Council fleet was preparing to bombard a rebellious colony world. when a human cargo ship happened to be in the system. Captain Lisa Rodriguez, Elena's sister, had sent a simple message to the Council ships. "This is Captain Rodriguez of the Earth vessel Prometheus Dawn. Any attack on civilian targets in this system will be considered an act of war against Earth." The Council fleet commander had laughed at the threat. One human cargo ship against 20 Council warships? The human was clearly insane. Then the cargo ship had opened its storage bays and deployed 6 relativistic projectiles. The Council fleet had withdrawn. Without firing a shot, word of the incident spread quickly. Soon, human ships were appearing in systems throughout the galaxy, carrying the simple message that Earth would not tolerate attacks on civilian populations. The Council found themselves in an impossible position. They couldn't challenge human ships without risking full-scale war with a species that had weapons they couldn't defend against. But they also couldn't maintain order if their fleets were constantly being forced to withdraw by human traders and cargo haulers. "Admiral Chun," Ambassador Zextel said, bringing her attention back to the diplomatic meeting, "the Council wishes to discuss the establishment of formal territorial boundaries. We propose that human space be limited to your current solar system, with clearly defined neutral zones around your territory." Admiral Chun studied the holographic star map that appeared above the table. The proposed boundaries would effectively cage humanity in their home system. "Ambassador," she said quietly, "I think you misunderstand our position." "How so?" "You're operating under the assumption that Earth seeks permission to expand. We don't. Human ships will go wherever human ships choose to go. Human colonies will be established wherever humans choose to live. And human weapons will protect human interests wherever they may lie." The room fell silent. What Admiral Chen was describing wasn't a territorial agreement. It was a declaration that humanity considered the entire galaxy to be within their sphere of influence. "Admiral," Representative Click said carefully, "surely you don't mean to claim authority over the entire galaxy?" "We claim authority over human citizens and human interests," Admiral Chun replied. "If that means defending a human colony in the Andromeda system or protecting a human trading ship in Council space, then yes, we will do so." She paused and looked around the room at the assembled alien delegates. The galaxy spent 4,000 years accepting that the Council had the right to dictate terms to everyone else. Now you'll spend the next 4,000 years learning that humans don't accept anyone's authority but their own. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched the diplomatic proceedings from the observation gallery above the main floor. As head of the Mars colony, she had a front-row seat to humanity's transformation from a single-world species to a galactic power 3 months ago. Her biggest concern had been water recycling efficiency. Now she was overseeing the construction of humanity's first interstellar colony ships. The irony wasn't lost on her. "Elena," Dr. Webb said, joining her at the observation window, "what do you think of all this?" "Honestly, it's terrifying and exciting at the same time," she replied. 6 months ago, we were alone in the universe. Now we're apparently the most feared species in the galaxy. Does that bother you?" Elena considered the question. "Marcus, I've been reading the intelligence reports about what the Council did to other species. Forced relocations, tribute demands, entire civilizations reduced to slave labor. If being feared means other species can live free, then no, it doesn't bother me at all." Below them, Admiral Chun was explaining humanity's position on interstellar law. "Earth recognizes no authority higher than human conscience," she was saying. "We will defend ourselves, we will protect our allies, and we will intervene when we witness injustice. Any species that finds this arrangement unacceptable is free to avoid human space entirely." Ambassador Zextel shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Admiral, the Council has maintained galactic peace for 4 millennia. You maintained galactic submission," Admiral Chun corrected. "There's a difference. Peace built on the threat of overwhelming force isn't peace. It's oppression with a different name." Representative Yara leaned forward. "What exactly are you proposing, Admiral?" "I'm proposing that every species in this galaxy has the right to determine its own destiny. No more tribute." No more forced compliance, no more threats against civilian populations. And if some species refuse to accept this new order? Admiral Chun's smile was cold and dangerous. Then they'll discover why threatening Earth was the worst decision the Council ever made. The meeting ended 2 hours later with no formal agreement signed, but the message had been delivered clearly. Humanity would not be contained, controlled, or intimidated. They had taken their place as a galactic power, and they intended to use that power to reshape the galaxy according to their own values. As the alien delegates filed out of the assembly hall, many of them were already sending urgent messages to their homeworlds. The galaxy was changing, and species that wanted to survive the transition would need to adapt quickly. Dr. Webb remained behind as the hall emptied, reviewing the holographic displays of Earth's expanding defensive network. Admiral Chung joined him at the control console. "Marcus, do you ever wonder if we're doing the right thing?" she asked. "Every day," he replied. "But then I think about what would have happened if we had surrendered to their ultimatum. How many human colonies would have been dismantled? How many of our people would have been relocated to meet Council approval?" Admiral Chen nodded. "And, how many other species would have continued suffering under their rule?" "Exactly. We didn't ask to become a galactic power, Sarah, but now that we are one, we have a responsibility to use that power wisely." He gestured to the display showing human ships scattered across nearby star systems. 6 months ago, the galaxy was ruled by fear. Species obeyed the Council because they were afraid of what would happen if they didn't. Now they're obeying us for the same reason. Is that really better? Dr. Webb was quiet for a moment before answering. "Sarah, there's a fundamental difference between our approach and the Council's. The Council demanded obedience. We demand justice. Species that treat their citizens fairly, that trade honestly, that resolve disputes peacefully have nothing to fear from us. And the ones that don't? They get to find out what happens when you anger a species that has learned to weaponize physics itself." Admiral Chun looked out through the observation windows at the night sky. Somewhere out there, human ships were patrolling trade routes, protecting colonies, and making it clear that the age of Council dominance was over. "Marcus, I want you to accelerate Project Titan. If we're going to reshape the galaxy, we need to make sure no one can challenge us." "How much acceleration?" "I want those weapons operational within 6 months. And I want them powerful enough that even thinking about attacking Earth is obviously suicidal." Dr. Webb nodded. "I'll get the teams working on it immediately." As they walked toward the exit, Admiral Chun reflected on how much had changed since that first alien ultimatum. Humanity had been forced to choose between surrender and war. They had chosen war and won so decisively that the very concept of galactic authority had been redefined. Now, when alien species had disputes, they asked for human mediation. When colonies sought independence, they requested human protection. When traders needed safe passage, they flew under human escort. The galaxy had spent 4,000 years learning to fear the Galactic Council. Now it was learning something new. It was learning to respect humanity. And for those who couldn't learn respect, they would learn fear. Because the species that had once been dismissed as primitive had proven that sometimes the most dangerous civilizations are the ones that everyone underestimates. The galaxy would never make that mistake about humanity again.